Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you. Visit cloudsigma.com/thisweekin for a free $200 credit.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by eMinutes. Are you a first-time entrepreneur looking to incorporate? eMinutes will form your corporation for free. Go to eMinutes.com for more details. And by SourceBits. Visit SourceBits.com to begin your mobile app development journey.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and this is a very important episode of This Week in Startups. It's our news roundtable edition. A lot of things happened this week. Facebook launched their search engine. Sadly, Aaron Swartz committed suicide, and we're going to talk about that. What else happened this week?
There was that little thing called Apple's cutting
Apple cut
orders.
Apple cut orders on their phones. CES happened. Oh, and Steve Levy had that great interview with Larry Page. There's a lot going on and a lot of stuff I'm kind of hot under the collar about, and it's going to be an amazing episode. With me will be Declan McCullagh, who is a long-term friend and just a really brilliant columnist over at CBS's CNET, and Eric Savitz from Forbes.com is with us for the first time, a friend of mine, really smart gentleman. Kieran's going to read the news, and it's going to be an amazing episode. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and this is a very special edition of This Week in Startups. It is Friday, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff in the news, and I'm going to have two very, very intelligent guests today, Eric Savitz and Declan McCullagh. You know those names, you've read their work, two brilliant guys, and I'll have them on the program in just a moment. We're also going to be having the third edition of This Week in Startups live. We don't really tweet this or talk about it because the tickets sell out so quickly. But Dave McCullagh will be with us on February 8th at Rocket Space. We just had Phil Libin at Rocket Space from Evernote. And actually, interestingly, all these guests agreed to do a raffle for lunch with them. And so somebody got to go to lunch with Phil Libin on their Sushi Wednesdays, and previously with Jeff Clavier. So we've had a great run. There was over 150 people there, standing room only. Fantastic audience, really smart people. It's one of the things I love about doing this show is that I have the smartest listeners on the planet. The questions were brilliant. Everybody is learning together. That's what This Week in Startups is about. It's about everybody learning about technology, starting companies, entrepreneurship, and putting a dent in the universe. This is the real-world manifestation of it. This Week in Startups Live. Go to twistlive3.eventbrite.com. Twistlive, the number 3.eventbrite.com. I'm getting good at reading like ads and stuff like that. You notice that?
Well, when you know them so well, it's so
I'm
easy.
Getting good at it though. Like I'm getting I think I'm getting rid of my nasally voice, and I'm trying to get like a little bit more of like a radio voice.
Well, you seem really serious today. You don't.
I'm in a pretty serious mood. Anyway, listen, I'm in a little bit of a serious mood. There's a lot of business that we need to talk about. There's a lot of topics I want to talk about, especially the Aaron Swartz thing, which has really been upsetting me, and a lot of other things are upsetting me. So I want to talk about all those things. I might be a live wire today. And at the end of the program, my friends from SourceBits will be on the program. As you know, we're doing crowdfunding at the Launch Festival on March 4th, 5th, and 6th, and the event's doing fabulous. I mean, isn't it amazing? It's so nice.
It's amazing.
This is the third year you've worked on it, the sixth year of the event, and it's just, we've got such an amazing team, DeMont and Bryce and Crute, and all you guys are just crushing it and getting all these great companies, great guests. It's going to be thousands of people there, and we're really going to help startups a lot. So if you would like to come to the event, go to festival.launch.co, or just go to launch.co and click on the festival icon. But stay tuned at the end because we're going to talk about the crowdfunding app we're going to do. This episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by our friends at eMinutes. They're a law firm with 20 years of service to the biggest names in sports, music, and film. They've embarked on a mission to incorporate 500 first-time entrepreneurs for free. They've done 350. There's only 150 slots left, so go to eMinutes.com and sign up for that. They'll pay the actual filing fees for you, which is usually $200 or $300. Why do they do this? How do they do this? Well, they are trying to help the startup community, which makes them very much in line with our mission, and they have a new service. It's called Entity Management, and that means managing your entity for corporate minutes and all this kind of stuff. It's incredibly affordable, only $135 per year. And they're the experts in this with over 10,000 companies enrolled. Their lawyers handle all the corporate minutes and the Secretary of State filings, all the stuff you have to do to be in the good graces of your local municipality. So if you want to keep the benefits of becoming a corporation, you really have to do this. So make sure your company is active and in good standing. Again, over 10,000 companies are enrolled in this program. Go to eMinutes.com. And really thanks, guys, over at eMinutes, because you've really supported the show for years, and I do appreciate it on behalf of my audience, the smartest audience in the business. With me today on the program, Eric Savitz from Forbes.com. Eric, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. And formerly of Barron's, of course. Many years there.
I was at Barron's for an eternity.
Yeah.
But I've been at Forbes for 2 years.
How long have you been writing about tech, by the way?
Oh, a long time. So it takes us back to close to 30 years ago.
Wow.
When I was a young wire service guy working for Dow Jones back in the mid-'80s.
And the big story in the 80s, of course, was?
The big story of the 80s. It was, I spent a lot of time writing about things like the mini computer companies, Route 128.
Wow.
Yeah, Data General.
You've seen a lot, and you know where the bodies are buried, so
all.
it's great to have you on the program for the first time. Declan McCullagh is back again. This is probably his, I don't know, fourth or fifth appearance, of course. Works over at CNET. How you doing, Declan? Declan, you there? Can you hear me, Declan?
Oh, man.
Declan!
You look like you were doing something.
Declan. McCullagh. You can't hear me. Put your sound up, Declan. Put your headset on, and we will have Declan on in a moment, but everybody knows he's over at CBAS CNET. Declan, when your sound is working, let me know. And let's go to the first story.
All right, so you said you wanted to start with Aaron?
Yeah.
All right, so this was pretty heavy story from last Friday. Aaron was just 26. He committed suicide, hung himself in his Brooklyn apartment. He is probably best known for co-creating the RSS standard when he was just 14 years old. Mm-hmm. He was a founder of demandprogress.org, a co-founder of Reddit. Now, the problem here was that the government was investigating his involvement in theft of documents from JSTOR. He was using MIT's network to download about 4 million academic articles. Aaron really believed that information should be free. He was facing 13 felony counts of hacking and wire fraud, looking at fines, decades in prison. Now, he was offered 6 months in federal prison. This was right before... Supposedly. The U.S. attorney who was working on this case, Carmen Ortiz, she came out and said that their conduct was appropriate in bringing and handling this case. A lot of people have been criticizing the government for overzealously prosecuting it. Representative Zoe Lofgren, whose district is in Northern California, she wants to amend the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act so it excludes terms of service violations, which was part of what was going on here. So you think it's fair to blame the government? And, you know, we had the co-founder of Diaspora commit suicide last year as well. Or is there something going on here?
There's a lot going on here. First of all, we're taking young people, our greatest resource, and when they do, obviously the spirit of the law here and the actual circumstance combined with this Carmen Ortiz, who was clearly out to make a name for herself, and is now denying it. But clearly, she was, you know, one of these ambitious prosecutors. And you see, we have a broken system where they're just trying to layer on as many charges as possible to try to get the person to, you know, basically plead their case. And what it means is, I think, for society is, unless you're rich and you really want to, but you may be forced to face this incredible, you know, deluge of felony counts, and it just means that they can in a heavy-handed way make you not have your day in court. And I think it kind of screws up the legal process. And then additionally, you know, what the person did in this case was clearly with a positive intent, and the people who owned the actual content did not want to see him prosecuted.
That's true. JSTOR did not want to prosecute.
And MIT has a little blood on their hands too. I mean, I hate to say it, but they did not pull back on their...
Right, they didn't support him.
Right, Harvard did, JSTOR did, MIT didn't. And MIT, shame on you. MIT community, shame on you. And I think they really have to take a deep, hard look at this. Now, could anybody anticipate that the person would kill themselves?
Well, he did have a history of depression.
Right.
So there's some background there. And his girlfriend was concerned because he'd been really down.
Yeah, who's not going to be down if they're faced
Right.
with a lifetime in, prison? And, I'd met Aaron before, and I'm not going to claim to be good friends with him or anything like that. I've just met him. And it's just tragic. And all these young people killing themselves, including the Diaspora founder, it's just heartbreaking to me because these are just incredibly talented people. And the cases are probably different. But what it shows is people are suffering, highly intelligent people put under stress, will do stuff like this. It seems to correlate actually with, in some really sad, paradoxical way, the more intelligent the person is, it feels like the more depressed they get because they realize how horrific the situation is, and then suicide, actually, this horrible option becomes, in their minds, a viable one, which is just tragic to me. I don't know. What do you think, Declan?
I know Declan's been on the air about this. Oh,
Yeah, Declan, we're not getting you yet, Declan. Your sound is down. Let's try one more time. You may have to check your settings on your system preferences and in your GoToMeeting. There's two sets of system preferences. And let's go to Eric. Eric, what are your thoughts on this while we wait for Declan to get on here?
Well, it's a huge tragedy, and I think that what's so alarming about it in a way is that the case that was brought against him feels like he was being prosecuted criminally for kind of a commercial protest move. That the level of prosecutorial zealousness for the crime that was involved seems way over the top. It's obviously tragic that he, beyond tragic, it's terrible that he chose to commit suicide. It's hard to know whether you need to blame the prosecutor for doing that or if MIT gets some of the blame for that. But clearly, it just feels like they were charging him with things that were well beyond the scope of what the seriousness of what he was doing.
Declan, you've been following it. What are your thoughts?
I have been following it. I think the truth of the matter is that, yes, we can probably blame the prosecutor. There was nobody who was harmed in this. Nobody had any data stolen, and in the sense that the private data was accessed and published. All that happened is that Aaron Swartz had the right to download a small number of articles for his personal use because he was affiliated with Harvard. He went to MIT's campus and downloaded a large number, over 1 million, for his own personal use or perhaps to distribute. We don't know because he got interrupted halfway through. But you don't levy charges, including an additional 10 charges filed in a superseding indictment last fall that could land this fellow in prison for a maximum of 50 years, 50 years, when the company that was allegedly wronged here didn't even care anymore. JSTOR has been saying since for the last 2 years that they're done with this case and they're not encouraging the prosecutor to pursue it. So I think this prosecutor is facing some hard questions, justifiably so. I would not be upset if she resigned or removed. There's a congressional investigation underway as well.
Yeah. I mean, just in general, cybercrime, Declan, I mean, I know you follow a lot of these legal issues and prosecutions. Is there some justification in this sort of wanting to, is the reason for this, forget about justifications, but is the reason why this, deluge of charges is because the system is desperate to not have cases go to court because of expense? Therefore, the prosecutors are just gaming the system, saying, let's just pile on as much as we can, get the person to fold their hands. In a way, in a poker analogy, be just shoving all the chips in the middle and saying, you have to fold now because there's no way you can afford to fight this many charges. In other words, is this just a crazy bullying tactic? Yeah,
I'm not saying that the problem is specific to the prosecution of Aaron Swartz. I talked to an attorney that he had known, Harvey Silverglate, who he's known for over a decade, and who he'd consulted early on in this case. Harvey was busy on a book and couldn't represent him, but he referred him to his old law firm. And Harvey was predicting that this would have cost him over $1 million, $1 million if this went to trial. The defending against the Department of Justice, the world's largest law firm, is that expensive. And so, but it's not a case of just Aaron. This is the way prosecutors often run their business. It's just that two things happened here that brought this to light. The first is that the target committed suicide instead of just pleading guilty and going away quietly. And the second is that the target of their prosecution had some powerful and influential friends, including members of the media, including Larry Lessig and Tim Berners-Lee, both of whom spoke at his funeral. And so they were able to raise the profile. But this happens all the time. And this is the way computer crime laws are written. If you talk to prosecutors, and maybe after they've had a few drinks and they're being honest, they'll say that federal law, not state law, but it's really federal law, is written so broadly that they can indict anyone. Everyone has committed some felonies, and so you end up having to trust discretion. And this case shows us we can't trust as much as we might like.
This is incredibly disturbing, and I think we really need to look at what is the goal here. And if the person was doing identity theft and stealing money and compromising, just civilians by, taking mortgages out under their name and credit cards and making their lives hell, I understand the tactic, right?
Sure.
But where is the judgment on this woman, this prosecutor, Carmen Ortiz's judgment that this, essentially very gifted young man who had so much to contribute to society,
but he
wanted
broke the law. He broke the law, and you will pay for breaking the law.
I know, it's just ridiculous. It has to be some
attitude.
judgment. And,
Sure.
Also, why not have the judgment to say, let's let this one go, let's let this one off easy so that we can actually fire the cannons and use our bullets on the next person who's actually doing something that's truly damaging to society. And why not really be looking at these people who act up like this? And I really don't think he even acted up that much. I mean, it's so borderline if even what he did is illegal. Like going into the broom closet and, putting a computer there to do it almost feels like it was a prank in a way, like a high-tech prank. Like, I'm just going to take all the books out of the library kind of thing. And
it
didn't feel like it was
sort of like a WikiLeaks kind of thing. It's like this information should be out there. Nobody should have to pay to have
But he didn't even release it.
Yeah.
And if he did release it, releasing some, academic paper that nobody's read in 10 years nor will ever read is not like Bradley Manning releasing some covert agent's information. Like Bradley Manning being prosecuted, I have less sympathy for because he was, under oath, to protect those people and their identities and, whatever you think of the war, you don't really get to out every covert agent. And if you do something that crazy, which it really was crazy what they did, him and the WikiLeaks founder, whatever his name is.
Julian Assange.
Like Assange, that they should pay the price if they did something that they knew was so wrong. But this case is so different. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that one thing that puzzles me is why there was so much prosecutorial aggressiveness about the way that they went after this guy. So I wonder if who is pushing the prosecutor to go after him in this sort of attacking way. As you say, it was kind of a victimless crime. These were. As you said, just nobody was reading these papers. He didn't really distribute them anywhere, and so I'm not sure I understand why the government chose to approach it in this way, as if he was committing, a truly heinous act. It's very peculiar.
Yeah, and perhaps when you mix this overzealous prosecutor who has absolutely no judgment, empathy, obviously, and just this vicious personality. I mean, I don't know the person, but this is obviously a very vicious person who's trying
just very career-driven,
vicious person who, just looks through, Aaron as an object. And then you put on this side somebody who's on the borderline. Anyway, this person obviously Aaron had talked about
His depression.
And I think he had talked about suicide at some point on his site or something. And so you have this incredible, emotional thing, and it's just a really bad confluence. But when bad confluences like this happen, society needs to get their act together and start looking at these things and having common sense come into play. And I see a really big parallel here with what happened in Newtown. And I know they seem like disparate things, but we have this terrible situation where somebody who is mentally ill, again, mental illness, and in that case, the mental ill person having access to guns, right? So you have this fringe gun issue, you have mental illness, you put it together, you have a tragedy, and then we still can't, nothing good comes out of it. It remains to be seen if something good comes out of it, but for the love of God, can we as a society, when we have these horrible situations, and they are fringe, thankfully these are not deadly occurrences, but for goddamn sake, can we learn from it? Can we move our society forward in some intelligent fashion with both Aaron's death and the tragedy in Newtown? And that's really all I have to say on it. Declan, you have the final word on this.
Well, you talked about laws that follow common sense. I'm with you on that. I'm not sure if there's much of a common sense constituency in Congress. You have members of Congress generally don't get reelected by saying, I'm going to relax computer crime laws. And that's how the Department of Justice and the State Prosecutors Association, the National Association of Attorneys General. All of these groups exist to create a ratchet effect, to lobby for tougher and tougher laws. There's a very limited constituency to go the other direction. Also, I think Aaron was a man of principle. And he did not want to say that he committed felonies. As a practical matter, if you're a convicted felon, there's some things you can't do. You can't own a gun, for instance.
Can't vote, right?
You're going to be discriminated against in terms of employment. Yeah. And I just think that he did not want to sign that paper. If they said misdemeanor, a few years of probation, I think he would have gone for it, and we wouldn't have been talking about him today. We would have been reading a new blog post he posted earlier in the morning.
Yeah, I feel like there's some disconnect in the world right now, and it's getting more and more pronounced between what is really going on in the world and then what is going on with our government and the people who work in it and common sense. It's like there's just two layers of reality. There's this reality that we all see here on the program and intelligent people see with whether it's the gun control debate or mental health or this prosecutorial debate or the fiscal cliff and the debt ceiling. It's obvious what we need to do as a society. There's an intelligent common ground that could easily be reached on these issues. And then there is this polarized insanity going on in our government and our representatives that is completely disconnected from how the citizens feel and how they want this society to be governed.
Well, and the only way you fix that is if you have enough people say to their representatives, I want you to do something. And as long as they bring home the pork, let's be honest, they get reelected every year.
Yes.
They don't get punished for blocking common sense kind of legislation or for doing the right thing.
And you see it in the media. It's like the media can't seem to get this. There's a whole new level of media occurring, like the show and some of the people who are here writing, who get what's going on. And then there's this fake level of media that's sort of CNBC just playing into all of this.
Well, they just need to have.
Let's go to the next story. I'm just getting
things to talk
more
about.
and more infuriated.
All right. You want to talk about something more inspiring?
Anything.
All right. Well, let's talk about CES because you were there last week.
Yeah.
Lots of cool stuff. This is the happy side of technology, right?
Hopefully.
VentureBeat and both The Verge had some interesting kind of wrap-ups. This is all about mobile. This is the mobile generation. There's a lot of fitness and health things going on.
Yeah.
There's gesture, there's voice, touch, kind of ways to authenticate yourself, not through passwords anymore. You had eye recognition technology in there as well. We had the 4K Ultra HD TV sets. And then Kickstarter kind of had its coming out, if you will, at CES with the smartwatch, the Pebble Watch, getting so much attention. And so I'm just curious to know what you found most impressive while you were there, or just from
Eric,
what you read.
what are your thoughts? What do you think of CES?
Well, this was not a year when there was any one gigantic winner of a product at CES. It was a little bit of an odd CES too in some ways, in that many of the most important companies in technology now don't go, right? So Apple has never gone, Microsoft didn't go this year, Google doesn't do anything there. There's no signs of Amazon. So a lot of the really big names that we think about every day are not there.
Facebook.
That said, I think there's a couple big takeaways. One is this was really the CES about mobile devices, right? So early on in the show, there was a presentation by the economists for the CEA, which runs the show, and their forecast for 2013 that is basically, if you look at sales, there's two categories of products that will grow sales in 2013. And it's tablets and smartphones. Everything else is shrinking. Televisions are shrinking, video games, you name it. Everything else is losing market share. So this is really the mobile device here. And even in some of the other product categories, you mentioned like health and fitness, but a lot of what you saw in health and fitness were products that connected you with a mobile device. So you're taking your blood pressure with some device and wirelessly sending the data to your mobile phone or your tablet, or you're keeping track of your fitness activity, those kinds of things. So that was one of the big takeaways. And everybody did talk about these 4K televisions, and they look great. They have super crisp screens, but there's no content, and no one's going to buy them for about 5 years. So I think it's just a sign in some ways of the trouble that the television business is in, which is, they tried to push 3D on us for the last few years. That was going to be the big thing. No one really bought those.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of discussion around connected televisions. But again, that kind of comes back to mobile devices and the role of content.
I'm going to agree with Eric on that. I think that this was a CES of just product excellence. Like it felt like there's a lot of product excellence across a number of categories, and the stuff I saw was very impressive. I met with Samsung, and I actually bought the Note 2 after making fun of
the one you made fun of when James was on the show 2 weeks ago.
I did relentlessly, but James was crazy about it. David Un from Samsung was crazy about it. I mean, he works for the company, but Ade Oresi from Founders Institute is crazy about it. Everybody's going crazy about this sort of like large. And just to give you an idea, like that's the iPhone in front of it. It just sort of, well, actually, you can't really see it. Well, maybe you can see it there. But the iPhone is just dwarfed by it, and the iPad mini dwarfs this.
Right.
But when I have the three devices there in the past week, I'm picking up this one most of all.
Because?
And I have to say, well, because it feels like it's the right balance between screen real estate of a tablet and keyboard of a smartphone, is what I've come to the conclusion of. You can type on here reasonably. You can't type reasonably on a large 7-inch tablet or even certainly not 11, 13-inch ones. But you get this massive screen real estate. This is the winning. I think this becomes the winning format.
And you can get over the geeky factor putting it next to your head?
I mean, I put it next to my head today for the first time. I felt like I completed it. I just put a headset on. So you're going to wear a headset with it. But I do think the other interesting thing that happened this week was I played with the BlackBerry 10. So somebody handed me the BlackBerry 10. Oh, my God.
That's what you've been waiting for?
Well, it wasn't the one with the keyboard, but they have one with the keyboard coming. But it has caught up to iOS in terms of the fit and finish of the hardware, the speed of the device, and the interface was beautiful. I'd say better interface than Android, on par with iOS. So it feels like even BlackBerry, as dogged as they've been, or as dogged as they've been, has doggedly come back to catch up to Apple circa 2012.
But it might be
then
too
you have
late.
1,000 cuts from Samsung and other places. I think Apple's at great risk right now. I can't believe I'm saying that, but Microsoft, I just got the Surface, so I have my Surface right here today, just came in the mail, and I feel like for the first time I've been talking to people who are 100% Apple, and they're like 60% or 80% Apple now, and they're trying different things.
They're trying them because they think they're good enough.
They're trying them because they're sexy, and they're better, and they're more interesting. Like, so the Windows 8 product line of desktops there, and I know desktops are out, but we're sort of super fascinating. Lots of innovation going on.
You like those like flip screen?
The flip screen, the twist screen, what they call them convertibles. I don't know. I kind of feel like Microsoft and BlackBerry, not dead.
Hey, Jason.
Go ahead.
So one thing I'd agree with you there, I think that's interesting, is every year at CES, Apple is sort of the presence that's not seen, right? That even there was one year actually when I think the initial iPhone launched during CES at an event in San Francisco. So you had reporters flying back and forth. But this year, the interesting thing was that the discussion around Apple touches on what you were suggesting, which is that the gap between Apple and competitive devices, whether it's in mobile phones or tablets or even in laptops, ultralights, has narrowed. And so you're talking about the Note 2, but there were other phablet type phones.
Phablet?
All over the phablet, right? Phone plus tablet is phablet.
Kill that name.
It's a horrible word, but they're nice devices, and you saw some of them really created a lot of buzz on buzz at the show. Huawei was showing one that was like 6 inches, which is almost tablet size, but not quite. And Samsung was getting tremendous buzz at the show for their devices too. And I think that is a risk for Apple, that they're a little less special than they were even a year ago.
What do you think, Declan?
You see that in the stock.
Yeah, you see it, definitely see it in the stock price. Declan, you think Apple is at risk now, and that the strategy that got them to this incredible, renaissance? Do you think that strategy is now, this sort of closed strategy is sort of outdated, outmoded, and maybe they're going to get, some amount of attrition, cut by death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I've been an Apple user since the Apple II days, circa 1983 or thereabouts, and I once worked at Next in the early 90s. I'm a fan of Apple products, but the only reason I got an iPhone 5 is because my home control app at home is iOS only. If it were Android, I'd probably switch. I think that what we're seeing now is inevitable. It may not be that terrible a situation for Apple. I mean, if you think of BMW, they've got about a 3% market share in the overall U.S. market, that's including trucks and autos. Something closer to an 18% market share. Porsche is about a third of 1%, but margins are higher at the top than the bottom, and both would be very nice businesses to own. I mean, maybe Apple kind of slips into that category, but the question for Apple, and maybe this is what you were getting at, is if they can take that huge leap beyond what their competitors have done. The problem is for Apple that Google has done this, or seems to be doing this, with Google Glass. I have an iPhone 5, I like it, but I'm a lot more excited about Google Glass than the next iPhone.
Yeah, and what do you think the chances are that Apple releases a groundbreaking product in 2013?
They've got a lot of smart folks working there. They're very secretive, obviously. I wouldn't underestimate them, but it's going to take a lot to dislodge Samsung. It's got momentum on its side. People are more excited about the next Samsung product than the next iPhone, which is something I've not seen before. Yeah,
it's a very weird thing to be talking to, the top bloggers. I was talking to, obviously, a lot of the top, gadget bloggers I worked with at Engadget and whatnot, and at Gadget, gdgt.com. And they're using Samsungs, and they're talking about HTCs, and they're talking about Nokias. And it's like, I think this fewer products got Apple to the point of having this massive excellence, but it's now working against them because there's more experimentation going on. And
they're a big target too.
And they're a big target. I think what's really going to be interesting is market share, as I wrote this week in my column, which was, it's great that they have these high margins, but what is that $100 billion plus $120 billion?
What are they doing with that?
What is that doing for them? And why would they not go out and buy cross-platform products? So, for example, Google is infecting Apple from the inside out. I don't touch the Mail app. I would delete it if I could, the Apple Mail app. And obviously, I use Twitter, and I use Dropbox and Google Drive. And iCloud, I'm like, why did I pay $50 for that? I'm like, going to turn it off.
And you're using Chrome instead of Safari.
And I use Chrome instead of Safari, yes. And I'm using Google Maps, not Apple Maps. So sometimes I try Apple Maps, but I prefer Google Maps. So now, even on the iOS ecosystem, I am 0.0% Apple software. And so Apple's philosophy of we make the best, most elegant software is not true. And they're holding to this idea that it's not cross-platform when Evernote is available on BlackBerry,
Evernote's
Android,
everywhere.
iOS, everything, Dropbox everywhere. So you have this class of application that's coming out that cuts through OSs, and it doesn't matter what OS you're on anymore.
So Steve's philosophy is outdated?
Well, the thing is, Steve's philosophy with Steve's performance and his charisma and his drive, I think can work.
Even today, if you were
maybe, I think he would still be competitive. Yes.
Well, and Jason, there are examples, right? I mean, you can run iTunes on a PC, right? So they're not unfamiliar with the idea that some of their software might want to be run on other devices. But you touched on another interesting thing about the cache, right? So one of the things that we've seen with in sort of the post-Steve world is a little more willingness of Apple to do things, do some things with the cache. I mean, they are paying a dividend now. They are buying back stock now, things that they never did when Steve was running the company. So now it raises an interesting question: are there other things that they would do with that cache? Will they make acquisitions? I mean, they've effectively done. You can count on a couple of fingers the number of sizable acquisitions they've done, including buying Next to get Steve back years ago. So it is an interesting question, particularly given that most of that cash is outside the country, right? So you've got $120 billion in cash, 80 billion of it outside the country that you can't really bring back because of the tax situation that you'd face if you tried to bring it back. So maybe they go out and buy.
Let me ask you a technical question about that $80 billion of that they would have to pay like a 50% tax on or something like that. Without getting into the politics of should they be giving amnesty or whatever, could they create a company in wherever, in London, in the UK, and then buy in that company, buy Twitter, Evernote, and Dropbox, and then make them, subsidiaries of that company in Europe?
I'm not sure how you could do that without incurring tax. I mean, I'm not sure that you could, I'm not a tax expert. I don't play one on TV, but I think that you would still run into this issue that that in order to bring the cash back to the U.S. To make an acquisition of a U.S.-based company, you're still facing probably a 30% tax penalty. So I think you've seen other companies with the same problem do acquisitions overseas, right? So you saw Microsoft use overseas cash to buy Skype.
Right.
We just saw Cisco buy NDS, cable technology company. Cisco also bought Tandberg, video conferencing company, all overseas companies. So you've got this cash that effectively is sitting there. You have to do something with it.
They gotta work this out and get that money in. They gotta get this money back into the United States. They gotta give them like a one-time tax break, or something. Just pay 20% tax on it or something. When we get back, I want to talk about this return of SOPA with Declan, as well as the Facebook graph search, and I have some thoughts on that as well. And Steve Levy, great interview with our friends over at Wired. But let me take a moment to thank, who's the other sponsor today?
We have SourceBits and eMinutes. We're going to do SourceBits at the end.
Oh, so we're going to see SourceBits at the end so I can just keep going?
You can keep going.
Oh, fantastic. Well, SourceBits, builds really great apps, and they're going to be on at the end of the program. So thank you to SourceBits. Stay tuned for that discussion at the end of the show. Let's talk about the SOPA thing that Declan's writing about.
Right.
I thought this was all worked out.
Yep. So last year, actually January 18th, 2012, which is now being called Internet Freedom Day, there was this mass uprising of the internet, and Congress listened. All these folks who were trying to pass the Stop Online Piracy Act, which we know was really more a Hollywood thing than anything else because they're worried about copyright infringement, basically shut it down. And so Declan went out and talked to some of the people who were pro-SOPA last year, the Motion Picture Association of America, the RIAA, some folks in the in Congress. And, a lot of them basically sounded like they're sounding like they want to work with the industry. So the MPAA.
Oh, that's a nice turn.
Yeah, let's use this anniversary to forge a path toward the future where the creative content and technology industries work together to develop meaningful solutions that ensure an internet that works for everyone.
Oh, wow.
The RIAA said, instead of looking to Congress for help, we are tuned into the marketplace and actively seeking out voluntary partnerships with intermediaries.
Declan, wait a second. Declan, what did you make these quotes up? Is this an April Fool's joke? Because this makes no sense to me. I thought the MPAA, RIAA were like, death to internets, we're going to go to our last dying breath.
Would I do that to you, Jason, and my esteemed readers at CNET? No. These are real. Look. I mean, they didn't give up voluntarily. They got dragged kicking and screaming into negotiations without SOPA. This is negotiations in the marketplace over licensing and things like that, as opposed to we're going to get Congress to do things our way. I mean, they didn't do this voluntarily. It's very painful for them because they're used to getting their own way. Ever since the mid-'90s, there have been about 8 different copyright laws enacted that Hollywood and their allies suggested, so that they're used to winning. But now they realize that SOPA was a big deal. I mean, when you have over 10 million people, Senator Ron Wyden puts it at closer to 16 million, but over 10 million is a fair estimate, saying don't do this, don't pass this law, and Congress's the websites crash, then they're forced to listen. And I'm not saying this is never going to happen again. The White House said months after SOPA that we still want to have some legislation dealing with online piracy, overseas websites, the Pirate Bay. The new chairman of the House Judiciary Committee that writes copyright law in the House has said that he wants to see more digital copyright legislation move forward. So something is still going to happen. But in the short term, the MPAA and the RIA, they're kind of humbled.
And is the reason why the MPAA we'll just take them, maybe backing off legislation, aside from losing and it being unpopular. Is this in part because there are so many people lining up to give them checks from the technology industry, i.e. Hulu, Netflix, Amazon? I mean, it feels like there is a dogfight for original content, so they should just shut up about the legislation and collect the checks.
Yeah, and just look at the Google Play Store as well. I mean, this is maybe not just in the last year, but if you look at it, look at it 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we had this horrible legislation from Senator Hollings. It was the CBDTPA, and the idea was that we're going to have anti-copying technology implanted into every PC, digital watch, phone, anything with a microprocessor, and it would just recognize, like the content that shall not be copied, and then it would not copy it. It was just insanity squared. But that's where we were 10 years ago, and the broadcast flag came around that time as well. And now, as you said, all these companies are writing checks to Hollywood. It's a different era, and I think that the large content owners have probably realized this.
We have this other issue too that reminds me of that crazy legislation to every CPU has to have bundled with it this DRM, which is insane. It's sort of like. It almost reminds me of the car legislation going, which I'm not super up on, but every car is going to have a black box recording everything, and you're not going to be able to drive a car that's not tracked, and I think that might even include GPS. Is that correct, Declan?
I haven't written about this recently. About 85% of cars sold today do have black boxes. The question is, should you, the end user and owner of this bloody thing, be allowed to disable it? Should you be allowed to access the data in it? Because it is recording you, and it may not be entirely accurate. And so there's a consumer rights issue there. I think, if I recall properly, the Department of Transportation has a proceeding, but I haven't followed it in the last 6 months. But it's kind of similar. I mean, it's kind of like if you buy something, who controls it? You or someone else? And
it's like now with have the Tesla, it's got a 3G in the dashboard. All these cars are going to have 4G in the dashboard. Like Find My iPad. Yep. It's sort of like Find My car. It's like everything's got, what was that called? That device that you would put on your car, LoJack. It's like LoJack is built into everything. Anything that can be hacked will be hacked. I mean, hackers are going to be able to know where everybody is at every moment.
Are you worried about somebody hacking into your car?
Well, I mean, there is this possibility. I mean, that system is isolated from the drivetrain. So I'm not worried about somebody hacking in and, putting the car in reverse, or neutral on the highway or something. But that should not be technically capable because they're isolated systems. But somebody could track where I am and know that I'm not at my home or whatever, and something bad could happen. I mean, I have security at home and all kinds of stuff. But it's it's just bizarre that we're sort of getting to that point where we're opting in, and I think the Facebook search sort of dovetails with it. But Eric, what are your thoughts on the sort of music industry and the movie industry now, just feasting at the trough as opposed to trying to create failed legislation?
Well, I think you're right. This is kind of a golden age to be in the content business. I mean, you walk around CES and you saw a whole set of companies, television companies, the cable industry, OTT device providers like Roku and others. All kinds of people were trying to take your video experiences that you were having either on your cable box or over-the-top content or personal content or social media or whatever, and trying to put it together in a way that was novel. But at the end of the day, they were all relying on content from the major studios. I mean, we've talked a lot about over the years about user-generated content and the role of user-generated content. But if you're sitting back on your couch and you want to watch programming, your first choice is still mostly going to be highly produced, professionally produced, high-budget programs.
Yeah, certainly.
People still buzz about, whether it's Breaking Bad or Homeland, or there's still all kinds of professionally produced content, even in a, 500, 1,000 channel environment. I think that the content producers are in a really good spot here because there is so much competition to gain access to that content, and I think they can just keep ringing the cash register. I mean, I think we are transitioning from a period when they were extremely worried about piracy of their content, but that will always be at least something of an issue. But I think the ability to monetize that content in so many ways now, increasing numbers of ways, makes it they control the experiences that people want to have. with video on the web or on their screens.
Platforms are actually going to be. It feels to me like a lot of the platforms are becoming. It's parity amongst platforms. Right? We were just talking before about how I was mentioning the BlackBerry 10 feels as good as iOS, and iOS feels as good as Windows 8 feels actually a little bit better to some people. It feels like it maybe is 20% ahead of where Apple is, and Android is finally usable. I'd say it's 80% of what iOS is. So you're starting to have this parity. When you start to have parity across devices, then what becomes the differentiator becomes apps. Well, now you're having parity in the app stores. So it's very hard to find something on it. I couldn't find a single app so far on a week with Android or just under a week that I couldn't find something that I have on iOS that I love on iOS that I can't get on Android. That was a very eye-opening experience. Now, I'm not saying that's the same on BlackBerry and Windows yet, but what does that mean if there's parity on the graphical user interface, the iOS, and the apps? I think it means that this content is going to be the dogfight.
Well, and the way the device looks, and Apple still has an advantage. They still make beautiful looking things.
Maybe. I don't know. The BlackBerry I held had just as good hand feel as the iPhone 5. Just as good. So I don't know. I mean, the Surface RT, the first thing everybody says about the Surface RT, or the Surface, is that is the most... that the hardware is like the most amazing part of it. They're like, oh, the software is a little ganky. They're still getting the bugs out. But that the hardware, and I felt it, and the weight and the craftsmanship feels amazing. Let's go to this Facebook search.
All right. So Facebook had a big announcement this week. It is now out with its third pillar next to the newsfeed and timeline. It's called Graph Search. They're first focused on 4 areas: friends, photos, places, and interests. You can search for things like movies my friends like, photos of my family. And they said that they built it from the start with privacy in mind, and it respects the privacy and audience of each piece of content. Now, stock has been down since this was unveiled, and we know that Facebook has changed its privacy policy to remove the ability to opt out of search results, but you can still control who sees certain updates. That was a piece that came out after this bit of news. So, and of course, you'll get results from Bing if the graph can't answer your questions. So, is this a search product you would expect from Facebook, and how long before Facebook is monetizing?
Declan, what did you think of the announcement?
Well, I mean, I think it's clever in retrospect. It's obvious. It's not just an advanced search. It's a really advanced, very smart search. I don't see it changing things. I don't see this taking a lot of revenue. I mean, unless you're going to search for maybe local plumbers that your friends used. I mean, do people really post about what their plumbers are? I mean, this is the kind of very local, hyper-local advertising that helps Google in large part pay its bills. And I just don't see that appearing on Facebook. I mean, you need all of your friends and family members, et cetera, to post all of this information that they probably aren't. Maybe as a dating site, it'll work. I'm not sure. But search is powerful. I mean, it made Google, and it also kind of made Amazon. People type what they want in the search box, and they click buy this now.
Eric, thoughts? Is this underwhelming, overwhelming, an enigma?
I think it's fascinating to watch them try and move into search in a way that isn't, it's kind of tangential to doing Google search, to doing mainstream search. It is interesting to watch the way the financial markets respond to this. So Yelp's stock, for instance, sold off. So Declan was talking about local search. There's some concern that, in your search for a local plumber or electrician or a place to have dinner Friday night, that you might bypass Yelp and use and search your Facebook graph. I don't know if that's true. We'll see whether that's true and then whether it becomes monetizable. But I think it is a very clever use of the technology. Now, you touch on the privacy questions. I think that the jury is still out there. I mean, I think we'll see when people bang on this for a while whether they discover that they're tracking everything that Mark has ever done on in his spare time that he happened to post on Facebook. Those kinds of things. We'll see how that plays out. But I think it's a fascinating way to approach this. People have been waiting for them to do some kind of a play on search.
Okay.
And I think this was an interesting way to do it.
Let me explain to you what's going on here. This is everybody knows what's coming, so it's almost like,
here he goes.
Here we go.
Get
I'm
ready.
winding up.
Take a deep breath.
This company is so lost on a product basis.
They're not innovative.
It is laughable.
Okay.
Number one, when I was a journalist, and I'm still sort of a journalist, right? I'm hosting this program. There's some random acts of journalism that occur here. And when I was also on the other side of the table, meeting with Declan or Eric and telling them about projects as a CEO, or whispering in their ear as an angel investor, the examples, the use cases you give for your product speak volumes for how important that product is. If you come up with a use case that, when you're talking to a respected journalist, makes them go, oh yeah, oh.
I get that.
Then you're in good shape. When you give the use example and the person goes, huh? What? Then you're absolutely effed. Completely and utterly effed. Now, when I saw this, I said, oh my God, Facebook has such potential in search. And I've been saying this for a long time.
Yes, you
They
have.
absolutely will launch a search engine, if only to kick Google in the nuts for making Google+. And they have no choice because we can see the social network's not monetizing that well. So when they launch this, and I look at their Chinese food places that my friends have been to in Boston, let me tell you something. The people whose opinion you don't need on food and movie recommendations are your friends. Your friends have no idea what they're talking about. Zagat, Yelp, Metacritic, Rotten Tomatoes, professional reviewers in Gadget, The Verge, Gadget, GDG. These are the people who are experts, and they look at the crowdsourced stuff. Even in Yelp's case, Yelp has a great process, a very well thought out, singular focus on how to make sure those reviews are accurate on a crowdsourced basis. But then Zagat, also the original crowdsource. People are not, there's going to be no network liquidity here. So your friends are not going to, as I think either Declan or Eric were saying, going to go through and be like, these are all the plumbers I like. They're just not going to do it. Who's got the time to do that? Nobody does that. And by the way, nobody types Boolean type searches in. I'm looking for, my friends over 40 who I've been friends with for over a year, who like Chinese and these searches were so absurd that they were showing.
Well, movies my friends like isn't that weird.
You may ask your friends, anecdotally, what did you think of Argo? But how many times do you ask your friends what they like and they don't like the film that you liked? It's not a good judge. There are better systems and processes out there. This is such a terrible launch. What they launched was Match.com search from 10 years ago. I'm looking for males and females friends. It's dating search. It's terrible. Now, there's so many interesting...
Jason, do you think it's fixable, or do you think this is they released do an early beta and do you think it's irretrievably bad, or do you think that they can fix it?
Yeah, see, that's an interesting question, Eric. Did they show 10% of what they're working on just to sort of tease the audience? And the other 90% is going to be just extraordinary. Well, I'll tell you something. After seeing this, I can guarantee you this will not be a success. Nobody will ever use this. We're not going to talk about it. There better be 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 features here that are extraordinary. And by the way, if you want to do search, crawl the goddamn web.
Not just your friends.
Not just your friends' graph. If they've been to Boston, what restaurant they were in Boston.
What about the Bing part? And Bing being
well, just
more
defaulting
social.
to Bing is no big deal. Who cares? Anybody can do that. You could, in the old days, you could get a Yahoo search
the
monkey
thing
account.
is, right? For them to do general purpose search just doesn't make any sense, right? Why you don't need another party crawling the entire web to do general purpose search. That's not really their strength, right?
It would only
they had
be
to do something else.
The only reason they would do that is so that people don't have to leave the Facebook ecosystem. But here's my problem with Facebook. They spent $1 billion buying Instagram, one of the most loved products of the last couple of years.
750 million.
Yeah, okay, right. So the stock went down so much it was worth 750. Whatever. They spent upwards of $1 billion on this incredible. They thought they were spending $1 billion, so they spent whatever. They spent all this money on this incredibly loved product that's growing like a weed, and they promote nothing about that product. And then their last two product announcements are a search engine that's pathetic, that's existed before, and that nobody wants to use, that has incredibly bad use cases. And then they rip off Poke, they rip off Snapchat, and make a 12-day pixel-by-pixel copy, which, by the way, Apple has a terms of service. In Apple's terms of service, you cannot copy somebody else's app, pixel for pixel, and then put it up there. So why isn't Poke being kicked out of the iTunes store for copying pixel for pixel?
Because it's Facebook?
Snapchat. But they should. They should kick him out for making a blatant copy. Anyway, the point is, Wall Street is looking at this company saying, what is going on? And then I loaded on the Samsung Note 2. I feel like I'm doing a commercial for these goddamn guys. I should be getting paid. But anyway, I load on there, and I saw an ad that I couldn't tell was an ad. So it says, all my friends like this. And then in tiny little gray, it says sponsors. And I didn't realize it. Declan, you can talk about this, but isn't it illegal to put this to ads out there that people don't know? Is that the FTC who handles that? Who handles that?
It would be the FTC. I mean, if it's either unfair or deceptive, and it's done in business, then it'll be under the FTC's jurisdiction. Whether that is, I mean, the FTC is not. It's top priority. Now, maybe it's shifted now that they've settled with Google, or didn't even demand a settlement. They declined to pursue Google. But in general, the top priority is not going after things that actually are disclosed in fine print at the bottom. I mean, they've got real scamsters out there. They've got real people stealing stuff and committing identity fraud to go after. So it's probably not the top priority. But on the other hand, class action lawyers are always trying to get $1 million+ settlements. Kind of
so if 7 out of 10 people did not realize those were an ad, should the FTC investigate? I'm without really spending a lot of time looking at something, I'm always hesitant to say, yeah, there's absolutely, definitely. If there's enough stink raised, the FTC is in the end a political organization. All the commissioners want to move on to higher things. It could be Secretary of Commerce or a senator or something one day. So if there's a political stink, they'll look into it. Yes, this is it. Thank you for the honest, overview of it, because it is cynical. But if the majority of people don't understand something's an ad,
No, you can't do that.
it feels smarmy. And remember, like Zuckerberg was like, oh, we're never going to have ads, never going to have ads. When you open the mobile device, I don't know, Eric, if you've noticed this, but the first thing you see when you open it is a huge ad for TurboTax or this or that.
Sure.
They must be so desperate for revenue that they're doing an interstitial on mobile.
Well, look,
and nobody knows it. Nobody's talking about it.
Right. The problem they face is and this is not a uniquely Facebook problem. Forbes has this problem. Anybody who's doing content on the web has this problem, that your users, your readers are moving to mobile devices from PCs and Macs. You have less screen real estate, and you need to figure out some way to generate revenue. Now, I will say, by the way, when you think about the way Wall Street looks at Facebook shares, the stock has had a nice rebound off the bottom. And the rebound off the bottom, in part, is based on the idea that they are starting to figure this out, that they are making some headway in monetizing on mobile devices. Now, the question you might have over time is, like, where's the tolerance point? Like, how much of this will users tolerate before you get to a point where they just go, I'm tired of Facebook, I'm going to go do something else? And so I don't know that we've seen that yet, but we have seen an increasing belief among certainly on the sell-side analysts on the street, that Facebook is starting to figure this out, and you're going to see a really big ramp the next few quarters of their mobile advertising revenue. So
there is a market. You're saying there's a market correction that occurs if people get too abusive.
Yeah, there will be some market correction that will occur if they push it too far. But you are going to see ads on Facebook, on Twitter, on every kind of content-based property on a mobile device.
Speaking of pushing it too far, The Atlantic, David Bradley, who's an investor in Mahalo, full disclosure, just a small angel investor, nice guy. The Atlantic ran a feature-sponsored content story in the main column. This would be like the New York Times giving you A1, whatever, A1 coverage. Main, big, what do they call the big name? Wall Street Journal, whatever. Column 1, A1, whatever. Left-hand column, sort of like the right-hand column online. And boy, did this create a huge storm. Look at this on my screen. It says sponsored content in yellow. So I pretty much knew the sponsored content, but boy, did people go absolutely crazy in the media business. And The Atlantic pulled it down. So putting aside how you feel about Scientology or not, are we in a desperate era? Because QZ, Quartz is another one that he's doing where there's they call it native advertising now. I guess Andrew Sullivan was asking about this, and it's native advertising. I think native advertising means you don't know it's an ad.
It's supposed to feel like regular content.
But we're really having a disclosure issue here, I think. But when you guys are aware of this Atlantic thing, what's your take, Declan?
Well, let me mention a couple things. So first of all, Forbes does some of this. Okay. So we have a thing that we call brand voice, which is basically, a lot of our content is in the form of blogs on the site. We basically do advertising sponsored blogs. I mean, blogs that are written by the advertiser. They're all labeled paid content or advertising content. It's pretty clear that there's a difference, but they're treated on the site like content from any other place. So you look at the top 10 posts, top 10 most trafficked things on the site on any given day, and one or two of them might be SAP brand voice or something like that, some advertiser that's on the site. Now, the question is how you treat the content on the site, and are you completely transparent about how you're doing it? So, the Scientology thing is hot button for all kinds of reasons, not the least of which is, there's a new book that just came out on this. I forget the author's name. I'm so sorry. But there's a new book about the Church of Scientology. There's all sorts of additional media coverage that's been out now, and they do this thing prominently displayed on their homepage.
Lawrence Wright, Scientology book.
It looks like yes, thank you. And so there's a lot of reasons it's hot button, but you need to be clear about it. I mean, look, people have been doing this for a long time. So if you go back...
But it used to be so clear, Eric. I mean, come on, we're old school guys here. It was very clear what was ads and what's not. You have to admit that the last couple of years, it's gotten very, very blurry.
Right. So,
does it make you uncomfortable personally? Does it make you uncomfortable as a writer? Do you ever think we'd come to this?
Well, it's certainly disturbing, particularly when you get things where it's hard to tell what is what. But if you go back to the 1970s. Okay, so in the mid 1970s, during the oil crisis, while Jimmy Carter was in the White House, there was Mobil Oil used to run an ad on the op-ed page of the New York Times. There's a guy named Herb Schmertz. That was his actual name. Herb Schmertz used to write a piece as an advertorial. It was a piece of text. It was not like a typical ad. It was a piece of text commenting on something, and it would run all the time on the op-ed page of the New York Times. So this is like an old school problem wrapped in a new technology wrapper. And again, it's always about, can you be clear about what you're getting and where it's coming from? That's the issue.
And here, I'm on the Forbes site, right? And so I think the reason why this went... I didn't hear from Declan. Declan, what are your thoughts on this as a journalist?
Well, quickly, it depends on what users are used to. If the Atlantic had been doing this all along, nobody would care, but they just sprung this on everyone. They've made some good decisions, very good decisions online over the years. They've embraced the web. Those came as a surprise. Megan McCullagh, a great writer, was there with them for 5 years, I think. But to their credit, they backed down on Tuesday. I think their statement said the first few words were, "We screwed up." So give them some credit for this.
Yeah, I do, and I think particularly, for example, there is this whole SAP section here on Forbes, and it's clear enough to me. I mean, I get it. I think what happened here is the Atlantic audience is so anti-Scientology, or probably anti any religion. I mean, put any religious thing up there, they would, it's probably a very high number of atheists, agnostics on that thing, and they're going to be anti any religion. But if you put one of the most polarizing religions up there, they're going to go crazy for it. So now, if this had been the Sundance Film Festival sponsored content of what's the breaking films that's brought to you by American Express and Mercedes, would we have had such a big deal, Declan? Yes or no?
No, probably not. You're right. I mean, Scientology has had a mixed history of the internet. I remember writing about them in the 1990s. Their lawyers once tried to remove an entire internet, a Usenet at the time, discussion group. They've filed their share of lawsuits. It's not the most pleasant history, and so that played into it.
Yeah, definitely. It's very interesting, though, this whole sponsor content thing, because I do think that there is, the banner ad doesn't work. People need to have a voice. And I think it's cool that advertisers, if you look at Forbes as well, at the top, this is where it gets super interesting. There is a thing on Momofuku, right? So Momofuku, obviously, the famous restaurant in New York, and restaurateur David Chang. And this is hosted by Brian Lehrer of Thrillist. So That's a quality person. With the restaurateur, that's a quality person.
Why wouldn't you want to watch that?
I do want to watch it, actually, but it's an ad, and it's Calibre de Cartier. I don't know who that is. It's Cartier. Oh, Cartier. Cartier presents this, and I'm like, you know what? I'm glad that Cartier is sponsoring that interview. I want to watch it. So I almost feel like, you look at Red Bull with the space jump, the most
the ridiculous.
watched, but that was one of the most I can't believe that guy didn't die. You know, that guy almost died. This is what people don't know. He spun out of control. He went into what the death spiral that they feared he would, that would have made him go unconscious and die. Like his blood would have rushed to his brain or away from his brain. He would have died, seizures, horrible death, and they cut like 20 seconds from it. I said this guy's going to die, and he almost did. And I talked to the Red Bull people, and they were like, that was not a good moment. We cut the feed. I don't know if that's generally common knowledge.
Well, that's something that was probably a wise thing to do because nobody needed to see that.
He was spinning so fast and out of control. The guy thought he was going to die, he told me.
You talked to
Not the guy, but the guy who
The Red Bull guy.
The Red Bull guy said the guy thought he might die. That was his biggest fear, was the spin. But that was the biggest, most viral, one of the biggest
top
media events, and it was brought to you
YouTube
by a
events,
brand.
too. Yeah.
And who cares if the logo's on there? As long as it's good content, I think people are forgiven.
So the answer for advertisers is just to have amazing content?
I think that is it. If the content's amazing and the brand's amazing, then you're fine, Well,
and there are other examples of content that people like to watch, right? So the most of advertising content people like to watch. The most obvious one is movie trailers, right? So I mean, there are all sorts of sites on the web that are dedicated to people being able to watch movie trailers where they voluntarily seek out advertising content. I mean, you see the same thing around, Super Bowl's a couple weeks away. There's going to be a big hoo-ha before and after about the ads on the Super Bowl. Some people don't care about the game. They just want to watch the ads on the Super Bowl, and people will re-show, on all these websites, you'll have collections of Super Bowl ads, and people will spend lots of time watching ads voluntarily because they're highly produced. They're entertaining in many cases, and that's the key, right? You're trying to engage with your audience. And so you have to kind of think up more clever things to do than run banner ads. And so, like you mentioned the Momofuku ad, or whether it's sponsored content. The problem that you face as a content producer is just making it clear. You need to be crystal clear about when something is a piece of editorial product that's been, produced by journalists in the usual fabulous way, or when it's produced by someone who's paying for it to be there, and that's the line. And in the case of this, of what happened with the Atlantic, was not clear to some people. And as you say, the nature of the content was highly inflammatory. If it had been a piece about the NRA, say, you would have had the same thing happen. As you say, if it was about something.
This is this is an example of. This is why. This is an example of the salespeople starting to run the ship.
That's
right?
a bad thing.
That's a bad thing. So I'm not going to name the sponsor. I guess I could name the sponsor. But anyway, there was a sponsor recently who wanted to be on the program. And it's one of these polarizing sponsors, but you hear them on the radio constantly. And I was like, I hear that product's a scam. And I typed the name of the product and the word scam into Google. And sure enough, 18 gazillion results of this product is a scam. And I said to Mont, hey, this is a lot of people. Would you use this product? Would you advise your family members to use this product? And he was like, I don't, and he sort of didn't think so. And I said, okay, do me a favor. Don't bring them to me anymore. I'd rather the show have no ads. Literally 0 ads. This way, what do I want? I spent all this 20 years of my career trying to build up some level of credibility, and then I'm going to read an ad for, it wasn't an e-cigarette company, but I'm just using it as an example. I'm going to read something like e-cigarette company commercial, like, hey, oh, wow, MailChimp is great, and now try e-cigarettes. I use both. It's obvious I don't take e-cigarettes.
Of course not. But you do have a line that you won't cross. It's very clear. That's your own personal line, and you can do that, but some
But the Atlantic
organizations
can do
don't.
that too. That's my point, is the Atlantic doesn't need the money. This is a salesperson who wanted the commission. This is an evil salesperson. This is a reckless salesperson. The salesperson should have told the NRA or the Church of Scientology, this is not going to go over well. Or maybe the Church of Scientology and the salesperson were like, you know what, we know it's going to get pulled, and we'll just take that.
We'll just take the PR.
Oh, that's what happened. They knew this would happen.
It was brilliant.
Declan, is that what happened?
I think you accused me of being cynical earlier. I think sometimes Occam's razor says that no, this really was a bad decision on the part of management, and probably not just a lone sales droid.
Well, Jason, I do think.
Hey, wait, you had a controversy too. I just saw Jim Lanzone. What about this Hopper thing? Are you allowed to talk about the Hopper being banned from the? How do you feel about being a CNET journalist when that happened?
Well, I think you should probably talk to the people involved in that rather than me.
Right. There you go. Very diplomatic. I saw Jim Lanzone. I had dinner with Jim Lanzone on Monday.
And what did he say?
It's off the record, so I can't say it. But I would just say that a lot of the journalists, I don't think that he feels differently than the journalists who work for him. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it was a fun week for him.
No. Well, and this went all the way to the top.
Yeah. And listen, I understand you're in a lawsuit with the company, but it's sort of, there has to be a line between editorial and the business units. And if they won fair and square, they won. That's it.
Yep.
I think that to me, what happened there also is that, I understand what the lawyers may have, say that we shouldn't be doing this. We don't want to have reviews on our site saying how great this product is when we're suing them, arguing that the product is illegal. But the problem you face is you're damaging your own editorial credibility. And so if people come to CNET as in many cases to read product reviews,
right,
or product news, and if you suddenly begin to have a creeping doubts about the editorial integrity of what they're doing in some level, you're creating problems for yourself with your own audience. And so I understand the impulse of what they did, but I think from an editorial integrity point of view, in terms of how you're viewed by your own audience, that seems like a really unwise.
I'll tell you why it's really super unwise. To just build on that, I mean, I think, Eric, obviously you're right. Like, this is like your ability to pick winners and review stuff, if you're a review site, is kind of important. But let me tell you why Les Moonves made a huge blunder here. So somebody who knows Les, I'm sure people who watch the program have his email. You can just email him, and he's not going to watch the whole program. He's too busy to watch this stupid show. But you can just forward him to minute 58. This is a message to Les Moonves. This is incredibly stupid of you, and you're an incredibly brilliant guy. You're an investor in Mahalo. Actually, they put $1 million into Mahalo. Anyway, point is, this is so stupid. Because, number one, if your concern is that it's illegal and that it's great, of course illegal things that let you steal would be reviewed as the best product ever. If it is, in fact, illegal, right? So Napster was the best program either. That actually buoys your case. Yes, of course everybody loves it. It's too good to be true.
We shouldn't have it out there.
It shouldn't be out there, just too good. That number two, nobody even knew what the Hopper was. Dish is like, who's Dish and the Hopper? Nobody knew who it was. It would have quietly won. Nobody cares about Dish.
Nope.
They would have been like, whatever, I'm into Hulu, I'm into Netflix. Now all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, I got to go check this out.
Now that it's all this controversy.
Yeah, people would have been like, oh, the Hopper by Dish. And be like, yeah, whatever, who cares? All right, tell me about Netflix. Tell me about the new iPad, right? There's so many other things, the Note 2, the Surface. There's a million things people want to talk about at CES.
Kindle Fire.
And now they put a spotlight on this stupid Hopper thing that nobody even knew what it was. I'd heard of it. I don't even know what this thing is. Now I want it.
Now you want it?
Well, no, but... I mean, I think a lot of people do want it. People want the thing that's too good to be true. It's like the Aereo thing that Barry Diller is doing.
Yep, in New York.
I'm like, oh, I got to have that because Barry Diller's, nobody wants it to happen. They're suing Barry Diller.
Exactly.
I want that.
Of course you do.
I can stream. Of course I want that. What do you think guys think of that, the Aereo thing?
Well, I think you're right. It's a technological fix to get around a set of business and legal constraints on how you manipulate content, right? That's really at the end of the day what the Hopper does, right? It's the Hopper service. It allows you to record the entire a block of time of primetime content, and then a day later to watch it, all of it, whenever you want, and skip the ads, right? So we kind of know that you need to have ads at some point along the way, people kind of understand that, but if I can watch it without the ads, that's what I
think Dish is making a huge blunder also by, the Hopper's one thing, they probably would have got away with that, but if they had skipped the ads, it's kind of dumb.
Well, TiVo went through that.
I know. It's just
days.
make people do a little bit of work to skip the ads. Like the automatic skipping. Like I'm not saying it shouldn't technologically be possible, but I'm just saying it's not a savvy business decision if you're trying to exist in the ecosystem. Fast forward, sure. Fast forward and rewind has to exist to get to the point at which in the program you want it to watch. And if it happens to let you fast forward through the commercials, that's fine. And you're going to see a little bit of the commercial, whatever. But to let people wholesale skip them, it's just not a savvy business decision for Dish or DirecTV or anybody, because all you're doing is poking the tiger, and it's also unreasonable. It gets back to the beginning of the show when we're talking about just being reasonable in the world. Just nobody's reasonable anymore. Everybody wants to be just unreasonable and only cares about their own position. Thank you for tuning into This Week in Startups. It's been an amazing episode. Thanks to our guest, Eric Savitz from Forbes.com. Everybody follow at Savitz, Savitz. What a great writer. And if you've got a great tip and a scoop, eSavitz at Forbes.com. Eric, anything you're plugging?
No, come visit Forbes.com. We're doing unbelievable content. We have like 1,000 contributors on our website now. Lots of great tech content.
You guys opened up like a little bit of a Huffington Post kind of style thing. You can be like a contributor.
Yeah, so we have lots of contributors on the site now. Everything on the site's in WordPress. All of our staff blogs on the site, but we have close to 1,000 writers on the site, all different kinds, journalists and non-journalists on all kinds of topics. Getting amazing traffic.
How do you
in December than the Wall Street Journal?
Do those people more than the Wall Street Journal? Really? Wow.
We had more uniques in December than the Wall Street Journal.
And how would those people are unpaid columnists? I take it, yes.
They have actually a mixture. It's a mixture. We if you look at I don't know exactly the percentages, but a fair number of those people are in fact paid. We have a lot of name brand journalists who have been working in the tech business for a long time, or some ex-Business Week people, other people who you recognize who are writing for us and getting paid for what they do. Some of them are doing things where they're consultants or lawyers or whatever, and they're just doing it to kind of wave the flag.
Yeah,
don't need to be paid.
Yeah, it's great.
But this
is
not HuffPo. We're not taking advantage of it.
All right, so everybody go over to Forbes.com and check out the Cartier video feature. I thought that was particularly good. I'm getting a little plug for Cartier.
And there's actually a page for writers like Eric, and you can read how he answered his little questionnaire, I guess, when he started. A lot of baseball stuff on there.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yes. Okay, so everybody go check out Forbes.com. Declan McCullagh, of course, of CNET, and he is Declan M, Declan on Twitter. Go follow him. Anything you're plugging, Declan? Any plugs?
News.com is a good way to get to our stuff directly in our little corner of CNET. It's a big, CNET overall is big, but news.com is where to get to just our best part.
Absolutely. That's it. Go to news.com and you'll get the filet mignon on CNET's buffet of amazing technology news. Thank you so much to my friends at eMinutes, and thank you to at SourceBits. Hey, Brandis, good job on the audio. Hey, if you ever have any audio problems or anything like that, just email team@thisweekend.com so that we know about it, or at downloading problems. Just email us if you have a problem. And if you're using like us on like some weird thing, like a television set or whatever, take a picture and tweet it. My Twitter handle is @Jason, and Kieran's is @Kieran Caldia, Kalia.
That's correct.
Launch Festival is coming up March 4th, 5th, and 6th. The hackathon is the 2nd and 3rd. There's $50,000, maybe $75,000 in prize money for that investment.
Just the hackathon.
Just the hackathon. And go to festival.launch.co, or just go to launch.co and click on festival. And you can get a free ticket if you're a broke founder. I got so many great sponsors. I'm so happy about the festival. It's going so well. Thank God. Launch Festival doing great, March 4th, 5th, and 6th. We'll see you all next time. Stay tuned for my little discussion with my friends at SourceBits. Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Declan. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay, and now we go straight into the SourceBits thing?
That's correct.
Okay, here we go. Joining me from SourceBits, let me just get my, I think Carrie is on the phone. Carrie, are you there?
Hey, yeah. Hi, Jason.
You are the project manager on my project.
I am. Yeah.
Okay, and Rick is there. Is Rick there, the senior designer? Is Rick my senior?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Rick, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Let's take a look at some progress here. I am looking at what looks like, well, that's beautiful looking. Look at that. Okay, so Leafit would be the startup there, I guess, is what we're looking at. And there's the product name, the average valuation, the founder, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Okay, so that's like is that the profile of the company?
The founder or the CEO, yeah.
Yeah. And then next over we have, yes, look, here's the schedule coming up and how much money has been committed to those companies. That's looking very nice. And you can just quickly go ahead and click the now. And you're telling people, I love that, like the next event unlocks there. Anything to discuss there on that screen?
I think the only thing to really note is that from the initial proof of concept that we passed on to you initially, we've kind of toned it back on the glitz because we feel that there's enough, we can provide enough contrast, enough readability, and enough focus there without going too far and being almost distracting.
Love it. And then here we go, super fancy app from the super startup, and you can commit right there. You can see how much they've raised. Ooh, I like this. They could put their screenshots in, or maybe we could pull it from their angel list or wherever, and they could just flip through all the different screens.
Yep.
Oh, very nice. And who is the presenter, and what's the product's name? Very nice. And here is our app sprint plan. Wow. So yeah, we're going to be sprinting, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of sports metaphors during this.
And so, what questions have come up during this process? Are there things that you guys have questions for me, or things that have become apparent from the design of this and taking the concept and making it reality that concern you maybe about the actual funding of companies, or things that you think are maybe opportunities that I should consider as the client? Concerns or opportunities?
Rick, would you like to handle this one?
Sure.
Hey, there's Rick.
Opportunities and concerns. You know what? I don't think we've run into any concerns, really.
Yeah.
I think the whole idea behind it is it's there to facilitate the startups, and I think the energy that it'll bring to the event, it'll be a big help for them. You know, a lot of these people, it's hard to get into it. It's hard to break in, it's hard to get that attention, and the application really needs to focus on providing information, but also restricting it somewhat, that we can lead it to the companies that, you know, people can say, you know, that interests me, I'm going to go find out more about it.
Yeah. And so thus the reason for the LinkedIn, the Twitter, and the Facebook profiles. If we click on those, what happens exactly?
That'll shuffle you over to the a Safari window.
A web window, or do you think it will take you to the actual Twitter app? What do you think will launch? What's the best practice there?
Well, typically you'd go down the line. If you'd kind of try and support the built-in apps, and then you'd fall back to the web ideally. I mean, some applications they bundle the view in. I mean, like a lot of Twitter applications do that. They'll bring up a web view and they'll say, you know, if you want to go to a proper web browser, they'll pass you along.
And so what do you think we should do here? Like, should you click the Twitter and go to that person's Twitter profile, or should it show you the last 3 tweets and then give you another click over to? What do you think the best practice should be for us?
I think it would probably be better for us to pass them straight along and not interfere. You know, if people, and because, you know, people are going to be logged into their Twitter and so on, they can sort that out. Let's not introduce a step.
Yeah, in other words, we can trust that we'll send them to Twitter, and that if they want to come back, they'll tab back over to our app. We can trust them and not try to game the user.
Exactly.
I think kind of agree with that. Now, what about the sort of contacting the person and you know, them getting the contact information? That's going to be in the background going on?
Yes.
So how do you see that happening? Every time somebody commits, it will send an email alert to some dedicated person, or are they going to get a Google spreadsheet? Have we thought about that? Have we thought that through?
I think on the back end, I don't think that's been decided fully yet. I think probably we'd try and consolidate that down. I think, if they get 50, 100, 200 people committing to their product or company, that's going to be a lot of email to deal with, and let's make it simpler for them.
So yeah, I mean, that's something I've started to think about, because if I was the entrepreneur, right, let's say things start trickling in on day 2, like I might, when I'm on stage, get 100 people, but then day 2 I might get another 10. I would actually like to see them as they come in, but the first 100 might be a flood. So I kind of feel like they would want to get the alerts one at a time, even though there might be 100 at once. Just like if you're doing Kickstarter,
Sure.
I would like to get an alert each time. It makes me feel good that they're coming in.
Right. Do you get the alerts on your phone, email? We have different options.
I just think we should just do it by email to make it simple, because we'll have the email of their team. So we just say, give us the email you want to get alerts to. And then we have to think.
You could always bundle it together, say, within this period, we'll collect it together into one email. That way, you're avoiding that rush, but we give them that flexibility.
Right. So we say, we'll send it every 15 minutes, and we'll bundle the 15. So if 100 come in the first 15 minutes, we'll say 107 people are interested in funding your company, and then it just gives you a big, long document.
Right. Do they get that as a spreadsheet then?
Well, I think we're going to have to give them a spreadsheet, but I also think that they would like to get it because they're going to be mobile on the road.
Sure.
And I don't think we have to build a whole app around it. I just think I would rather just get it in a document format or an email or something like that, so that I could just scan it and say, like, I'll just go call this person because their phone number's there or their email is there. Just click their email, or I text them. Any of those things. But we don't want to make this app like super bloated either. So I don't want to build like a communication layer into the app. I don't think. I would rather just like use whatever communication where this would actually occur, and the best place for these discussions to occur would be email.
Offline.
Email, well, it's still online, but it's off the app. Off app.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we're making some sort of intranet for all this so that my editors can add the information?
Yes. On the back end, we have the admin console. So we handle the scheduling and the company editions and everything like that.
Great. So now we have all the database design and that done. And the sign-in screen will be Facebook or Twitter. We'll have that we have that questionnaire, so we'll know if they're accredited investor or not. And this is just to be completely honest with everybody. The crowdfunding piece is going to have to be launched dollars. So if they're non-accredited, it will be launched dollars. And if it's an accredited person, it'll be a non-binding commitment. Because obviously both parties need to meet each other and decide.
Sure.
So we don't want to consummate anything right now, even though there are some people doing, like Second Market, I guess, and AngelList, some people are doing those $1,000 commitments. Right. But that's incredibly complicated. They're only doing it for a small number of people. So it seems like due to the SEC's turnover at the top, I guess they turned over their head person, and they're 6 months behind on crowdfunding. This is going to be a simulation for non-accredited investors. We're going to make that decision right now at this very moment. And it's going to be a show of interest for people who are accredited. Lest anybody want to arrest me, it's going to be a simulation with launch dollars. So we'll call them launch dollars.
Everybody will have launch dollars, not just
but accredited people. That's a good question. I think accredited people could have launch dollars too, and they could submit launch dollars. But I think they'll more generally just pick
a launch dollar is equivalent to a regular U.S. dollar.
A launch dollar is equivalent to a U.S. dollar, except they're not committed to do it because they can't invest.
Right.
So since they can't, they'll be simulating if they could, and then we have to pick a dollar amount that the non-accredited people would have to spend at the event. So we'll put that at maybe non-accredited investors have a total of $25,000 in launch dollars.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but if you think the average net worth and salary of a couple, $200,000 a year, 10% or something, it was like two-person.
Even broke founders?
Well, no, broke founders would be totally different. But I mean, they maybe we'll let them pick what they want it to be, but it'll be up to 25. Because I think once you get above $25,000, 10% of your salary, then you're starting to tip over into accredited. So I just thought the max they could possibly do would be 25.
Okay.
And then if you could since it's a simulation, we'll just rely on people to self-police themselves.
So you shouldn't be pledging more money than you would actually ever have.
Right, and some people will, but it's it's just an indication.
Sure. Because if it's funny money, I'd give $10,000 to that company.
That's a good point. Maybe we should just limit it to 10, and then we'll just sort of, maybe we'll just limit it to 10 for the non-accredited.
That's a good, nice round number.
10's a round number. We'll make it 10. Okay. We'll have the nice schedule here. Great. So any other questions or thoughts for me, guys? or Kieran?
How
From design sides?
Design side looks very tight. It's beautiful. That's one of the things I like about working with you guys. It's almost like a lot of the time when I work with people, you see how much I have to focus on design because design never comes out right. It's like I just look at this and I'm like, you know what? I could give you feedback on the design, but I think I would actually make it worse because I think it's so. I love the fact that you've gone stripped down and clean, and I love I don't know this sort of striping here of different blues, but keeping the palette of blue.
And you definitely wanted the blue.
I like the blue.
Yeah.
I like blue. I mean, orange is my favorite color, but I'm not going to pick it based on my favorite color. I'm going to pick it based on what I think will be pleasant for people to use, and the blue just looks really nice. I don't know, what do you think? You like the blue?
No, I like the blue. I wasn't sure if you wanted for branding purposes it to be orange.
Like orange and blue are our colors. That's the colors of the Knicks. That's always my favorite two colors of blue and orange. So I think it's fine. I mean, we could put a little launch rocket in the top right hand for the home screen or something. But I'm not really concerned about our branding so much in the app. We're gonna have a splash screen or whatever, and the sponsor logos will be in there obviously. So I think we'll be good. Awesome, guys. Well, listen, this has really come together great. It's awesome having a partner like SourceBits because with your design-led engineering, it sort of makes everything so simple, and very confident in your ability to execute on this. So thanks again to Carrie and Rick over at SourceBits. And I know that now I'm like one of 5 or 6 clients now that have been generated from the show that I know of, that I've seen work that's come out of it. Like I've actually seen the work, and I have to say, you guys are living up to the promise of doing beautiful work and being very professional about it. How's the business over there? You guys crushing it? More work than you can handle?
Pretty well.
Is it honestly more work than you can handle?
No, I think 14, 15-hour days, I can handle it, yeah.
Are you really working 14-hour days? Is it that intense?
It's not like you're going to flip burgers for 14 hours. It's quite great, actually. Yeah,
yeah, it's because it's creative. But, I mean, you guys are busy. Busy.
Very, very busy.
Yeah.
You see, that's the thing is right now everybody's so behind on mobile that, trying to build this inside your company in a lot of cases, just not worth it. So if you got a big company or a medium-sized company, a startup even, the folks over at SourceBits will work with, 2-person startup all the way up to 2,000 person.
Like the guy we had from Mexico City who built the Instaplayer, right?
The Instaplayer was brilliant. I love the Instaplayer. You guys work on Instaplayer? You guys involved in it? Rick, you worked on Instaplayer?
Yes. I did the original VD comps for that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Love that. We had them on the program. All right, thanks again, SourceBits, for being a great sponsor of the program and the festival and really helping us grow this really unique concept. I'm really interested to see where it goes. I think we're going to have a lot of people very interested in doing the
It's one big experiment, right?
Yeah, listen, we're trying different things, and then that's what entrepreneurship is about. Thanks again, SourceBits. Of course, Eric and Declan, thanks for being on the program. What great guys. Make sure you check out Forbes.com. Tons of great editorial. Right now, go check it out. And, of course, go to News.com and read Declan, and he's Declan M on Twitter. Please follow him. And for my super fans, go ahead and thank at SourceBits and at eMinutes and at Savitz and at Declan M. Just thank the guests and the sponsors right in the same tweet for making a great at TWI Startups episode, right? So TWI Startups.
TWI Startups, yep.
At TWI Startups. What a great episode. Lots of good stuff going on and great to see progress. And we have, almost 10 of the slots filled for the launch festival, looks like.
Yeah.
Between your recommendations.
Lots of good stuff.
So if you have a great startup, or somebody with a great startup who wants to launch at the festival, have them go through the front door. But if you have my email or Kieran's, jason@launch.co or kieran@launch.co, you can always, send a little email and say, hey, since you're a fan of the show and you made it to minute 120, you can email us and say, check this out. It's super cool sugar.
Exactly.
We'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.